Hey everybody, we're going to try out something new today. And in this video, we're going to work on solving some quadratics. And a quadratic is an equation that has x squared in it. And x squared means x times x. So we're looking for two x's on every single one of these problems. Does it guarantee that there's going to be two answers? Nope, but we're going to be looking for two answers and hope and try to get two answers. Some might be no solution. Or maybe it's a duplicate answer, like maybe you get 5 and then 5 again. But we're going to go ahead and look for two answers on all these problems. So it's just using algebra, and we're going to do what we know how to do, which is to undo. And we're going to go ahead and subtract the 7 from both sides. That gives me x squared equal to 25. There's two x's that can square to get to a positive number. Either it can be a positive times a positive, or it can be a negative times a negative. So we're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. What I like to do when we cancel out these two answers right there is I like to go ahead and break it into two equations so that I'm going to get my two x's. And the square root of 25 is going to be 5, but the second answer can also be a negative. So negative 5 is going to be our other answer. You go ahead and plug this back into the original if you want and see if they work, but 5 squared is 25 plus 7 is 32. Also, negative 5 squared is 25 plus 7 is equal to 32. Cool, so there's our first one. And our next one, again, we're just solving for x. I like to call it get rid of the extra junk, so that 1 is definitely not needed there. We can go ahead and subtract that 1 out of the way. That gives us 3x squared equal to 27. A lot of the times I'll have kids in class try to square root at this point. I don't think that's really a good idea. What 3x squared really means is 3 times x times x. So why don't you get rid of the 3 and focus on the x times x. So I'm going to go ahead and divide that 3 out of the way and get x squared is equal to 9. There are two answers to that when you go ahead and square root both sides. One of them that your calculator is going to give you as a square root of 9 is 3, but there's also a second answer, which would be at negative 3. Cool. Again, at this point right here, you're allowed to square root if you want. It would have to square root everything. I don't know what the square root of 27 is. I don't know what the square root of 3 is. I do know what the square root of x squared is, but I don't know that that's really going to help me as I go forward with that problem. So try to get rid of the extra junk as I've kind of said as my strategy. Okay. Number 3 is where things start to change a little bit. We still have an x squared, but it is inside a group. So when I think about getting rid of the extra junk and what's furthest away from the x, I can't add 5 right away to both sides because that's in a group. So I'm going to have to get rid of that squared right away. So I'm going to go ahead and square root as my first step on both sides. That gets rid of the squared. It gets rid of the two answers. So at this point, I'm going to break it into my two equations. So that would be x minus 5 because that squared and that square root are going to cancel. So it'll be x minus 5 on both sides. And then the square root of 4 is 2. And then my other answer, remember there's always two answers to a quadratic. I need a negative 2 on the other side. I need to make sure of those two answers because I just scribbled out the x squared there. So there isn't two x's anymore in the equation. So I need to make sure I have my two x's on both sides of that equation. Cool, at this point we just go back to middle school math. We go ahead and add 5 to both sides. That gives us 7. And we go ahead and add 5 to both sides. And that gives us 3. Cool, you're welcome to go ahead and plug it back into the original or to double check. If we did plug in a 7 into the parentheses, 7 minus 5 is 2. 2 squared, that's definitely 4. Or if we plugged in a 3, 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared, that turns it positive. Cool, so we've got what we need. Hopefully we're starting to learn a little bit about quadratics and when to split those into the two equations. When I take a look at number 4, there's some extra junk, and then I'm going to focus on that group. So I'm going to go ahead and add 4 to both sides, and I get x plus 3 squared is equal to 9. I can't subtract 3 from both sides. At this point, I have to get rid of the square that's the furthest away from the x. So I'm going to go ahead and square root, and what happens when I square root, I get rid of the squared. That is canceling out the two answers. I need to make sure that I have two answers here. So I should have x plus 3 for both of my equations. The equation shouldn't change, but square root of 9 could be a 3, or square root of 9 could be a negative 3. That's where my two answers are going to come in. Cool, at this point I go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides. That's easy. One of my answers is x equals 0. I go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides over here, and I get x equals negative 6. Again, to kind of follow through on the steps there, I'm getting rid of the extra junk, right? I see the parentheses. I want to get rid of the stuff outside of the parentheses. Then I can focus on that group. Cool. And then in our last one, we've got a lot going on. It puts everything together. Get rid of that extra junk. You can basically view this as 2x plus 9. And you solve that in middle school. You get rid of the 9. You get rid of the 2. Then you focus on the x. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to go ahead and subtract 9 from both sides. We're going to get 2 and this group equal to 32. Get rid of this extra junk, the stuff outside the group. I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2. Divide by 2. That's going to give me my group equal to 16. Cool. Now at this point I can't get the 1 yet. I got to focus on the stuff outside first. So here's where I'm going to go ahead and square root. And square root, this gets rid of the 2 answers. Make sure you break it down into 2 equations. X minus 1 and x minus 1 on both sides. The square root of 16 is 4, but quadratics have 2 answers we're looking for, so negative 4. Cool, we finish up by adding 1 to both sides. Sorry, I'm a little sloppy here. 4 plus 1 is 5. And then I add 1 to both sides. And I get x equals negative 3. Cool, there's my 2 answers. You can plug them in and double check them. But there's a bunch of problems in 7 minutes. Have a great day.